Welcome back to the Becoming Her podcast. You guys, Dr. Ann and I are back. And just before we hit record, Ann let me know that she's been up since 1:30 a.m. and it's currently 8 p.m. her time. And so she does a little blah, 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 blah. It's fine. It's fine. And we were just laughing because yet I have yet to, we're 70 plus podcast episodes in to edit a single podcast. I don't want it to feel that way. I want it to feel very authentic, even the stumbles and the ums and the ahs. And so we were joking around because I was like, I've had other guests on the podcast and I'm like, look, we don't edit around here. So if you fumble, just roll with it kind of thing. And so poor Anne, as I'm saying this, and she's been up since 1:30 a.m. So give her some
So,
grace is what I'm trying to say.
so if I sound slightly drunk or I'm slurring my words, it's only exhaustion, not alcohol. Don't worry about it, guys.
I feel like you should have a glass of wine with you, though. It might make you more coherent at this point. Like,
Oh, no, no, no. I would be two sips in and I would literally fall asleep mid
oh,
podcast.
oh my,
I would like standing. I would just do that. Yes.
oh my gosh, that's so funny. That's so funny. All right, guys. Well, I'm excited about today's episode because I don't know if you guys know this, but half the time I utilize these episodes for just therapy that Anne gives me. And this is something that I know everybody's going to resonate with. This is something that I am still actively working through as I've done my own journey with my parts work and all of the personal development that I've been doing personally, the personal development I've been doing personally. But today we're not talking about hormones. We're not going to talk about fat loss. We're not talking about menopause. We're going to talk about something that affects every single relationship that we have, affects our marriages, our friendships, our relationship with our kids, and honestly, the relationship that we have with ourselves, right? We're going to be
Yeah.
talking about stories versus feelings. And this is going to be really powerful if you guys allow us to dive into this because I think most arguments, and Anne, I'm sure you would agree, start where we think they don't start where we think that they do. I think that somewhere along the way we've stopped talking about how we actually feel and we've defended more about the story that we've created around it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I would actually say this is one of my little passion projects is to educate the world. And I am saying it because I was 4 degrees deep into psychology, had been to 3 separate universities to get all of my degrees. I did not know how to identify my own feelings and the difference between feelings and stories. And it absolutely rocked my world, not just as a human being in my own relationships, but what I do as a professional and how I show up in counseling now. So now it's like, it's my personal mission to share this with people because I'm like, no, seriously, guys, nobody taught me this in school. Nobody taught it to me in my practicums. Like, I just happened to stumble on it because I was fortunate enough to find a therapist that like understood this. So this is mind boggling, but this is make or break in relationships and make or break in you getting heard by people.
So what Anna's saying is that if you guys find value to this, share because she's trying to educate the world. So share, like tag us, do all of the things. So that's really what so I'm like gonna or I guess decode that for you. So she's just, politely saying, share this episode.
Spread it, please, please, please. Yeah. So I really just want to dive in because I
Yeah,
think
let's do it.
I I finished my day working all day today, and that is always what I'm looking for. I'm looking for attachment related cues and emotions and the stories that get created. And that is because most conflict isn't a communication failure. It's actually a mix up between two different tools, the feeling and the story that the brain creates. And
Mm,
and what's interesting about this is that the brain is actually wired for story because it's wired for patterns. It wants something that's predictable. And the interesting fact is that your brain doesn't care if the story is accurate. It just needs something to go off of so
mhm.
it knows how to respond and how to keep you safe.
Yep.
And understanding that, then what that means is that our stories often come from our childhoods and we continuously relive them in every relationship. And we relive essentially the messages that we're getting. And we don't get really clear on what the difference is.
Mm,
So a lot of times when I see people in my office, they'll talk about, I share my feelings all the time with my partner, or I let my parents know how I felt about this. And somehow they find themselves defending an argument they've had literally their entire lives, or yet again, I've been dismissed. And when we go over what they're actually talking about, and I say, no, 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 give me the words that you used, what we uncover is that they never once identified any feeling or shared a feeling.
mm.
And that's so powerful because when we lead with stories, we get defensiveness
Yep.
instead of responsiveness.
Yep, because we're trying to defend the stories that we have like made in our head kind of thing. So, yep,
Yes.
I'm so guilty of this. That's why I'm saying I'm so excited to dive into this episode because it's going to be a little personal therapy session for me, you guys, because this is something I'm still actively, like I said, practicing and mindful of. So,
Yeah. And before we actually define this, off the top of your head, Nicole, what's the difference between telling someone you're upset and telling someone why you're upset?
because one's a feeling, right? Like one's I'm upset because XYZ, but really typically there's something so much deeper rooted underneath that.
Yes,
So it's typically like we want to label it as, you know, I am, I'm lazy, I can't do the things, but underneath there's a feeling of being judged, there's a feeling of failure, there's a feeling of, just whatever that feeling that's coming out, and we're positioning it as a story that we've made up in our head, and we haven't got to the root of what that feeling really is.
that's right. That's right. And in order to do this correctly, we have to start with definitions. I'm a real big, I love words and I love how to be really, really exact. As a matter of fact, when I was in second grade, the teacher was really impressed with my ability to know the difference between a pen and a pin because I asked her for a pen. I was kind of nerdy even back then. I love it. But okay, so I want to define the feelings. Feelings is typically one word. It is physiological and it's true regardless of anyone's intention. So, feelings are just simply the emotions that we experience things like anger, sadness, love, joy, disgust, jealousy, hopelessness, helplessness. Those are the emotions. And the story is the interpretation that's layered on top of that. And this is how this typically goes. And typically the story is a verdict or a judgment about why the intention behind why someone did something that actually hurt us. And this is how sharing feelings typically goes. And this is how sometimes I do this for a living. I talk about this all the time. I'm really passionate about it. And sometimes I default to it because that's what I grew up with. So what will often happen is that we will say things like, I feel like you just don't care about me.
Mm.
Now, notice I didn't actually share an emotion. I
Mm.
shared the story with you.
Yep.
And as we go along, I'm going to talk to you about why it is, we're going to reveal why it is that that's so problematic in relationships and why that usually creates empathy failures with our delivery.
Yep.
So why do feelings and stories actually get fused? And the reason for this has to do with psychological defense mechanisms, because when we have a raw emotion, a feeling that's coming up, that actually comes with a lot of vulnerability to it. It feels very exposed, and the story itself gives it armor. Ironically, anger, what I often tell people about anger, and people often get really frustrated with me. When I was doing this work, I also got frustrated with this process because when they say, well, I'm mad, and I will say, well, okay, what else are you feeling? And they'll say, well, I'm frustrated. I'm like, okay, so what else are you feeling? And they'll say, well, I'm irritated. I'm like, okay, so what else? And that's because anger is often the secondary emotional reaction. It's kind of like what I like to call the guardian or the knight in the castle.
Mm.
It protects more vulnerable feelings from being exposed. We know what to do with anger. We can attack with anger. We can wield with anger. We can punish with anger. But admitting that we're sad about something,
That's vulnerable.
now,
Feels vulnerable.
yes, that's a much scarier place because I don't know how you're going to react to that.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
But what's interesting about this is that armor is exactly what makes the other person defensive. Because when we're sharing the story, often we're sharing blame on the other person. We're projecting our feelings onto them. We're saying, you made me. As a matter of fact, I hear this often in my office. Well, they made me angry. No, 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 they didn't make me angry. And I often try to get people to prove this. And I said, okay, well, if people can make other people angry, then make me sad right now. Make me happy. Go ahead, give it your best shot.
Mm-hmm.
And people get really intimidated by this, but I say I will actually defend this to my core. Try to make me have an emotional reaction right now that you think it might be hard for me to have. And if I'm not in that space, I'm going to refuse it.
Yep. Nobody can make
Because
you angry. Nobody can make you anything. Those are parts that can get triggered, but nobody can make you angry.
yes.
Yep.
Now I want to point out one important caveat to this. it can be very understandable why people get angry and hurt. If your partner is cussing you out and name calling you and belittling, it makes sense that that doesn't feel good, but they are not making you feel badly. They're not making you feel ashamed of yourself. That's something that already lives inside of you. It's something that they're struggling with, but it does mean it's understandable. So I want to talk about the research related to emotions. There, one of the communication tools, and I don't particularly care for this name because it's in my mind it's kind of like a tongue in cheek every single time I say it. It's Rosenberg's nonviolent communication model, and in this model, what it does is it separates the difference between an observation, a feeling, a need, and a request. And this is because when we can do that and we can discriminate between those four different things, we actually communicate with much more clarity, but also a lot less projection.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, matter of fact, I just had this conversation with one of my teen sons earlier tonight. Sorry, Kyle, if you're listening to this. Um, but one of the things that I mentioned to him is that, hey, honey, when you tell me that you're going to mow the lawn and then you don't mow the lawn and then you don't mow it after you say that you've done it again, I start getting anxious. And then I start getting angry about it and bitter because I want to be able to count on you to do what it is that you say that you're going to do. And I understand that you don't mean to be doing those things. I get that you're probably just getting sidetracked and enjoying your summer. And we need to have a heart to heart about what this is going to look like so that I don't have to intervene with consequences now.
How did he react to that?
No, he sucked up real fast and he's like, oh, yep, no, got it. I'm going to go get my shoes. I got it. And I said, well, but moving forward, we're going to have to problem solve this because I don't like that feeling. I don't like feeling anxious, even though I know that I know that you want to, and I know that every single time I ask you to help, you're always pitching in. And I don't like the feeling I have when you say that you're going to do something and then you forget. So we're going to have to problem solve how to move forward.
I love the way that you handled that.
And what's really cool about this is that when we struggle to talk about our feelings with responsibility, in our brains, it becomes a source of conflict because the only way that we know how to do it is by telling someone what they're doing. So old me would have been like, why aren't you getting the lawn done?
Yep.
Why,
100%.
do you think it's not that important? Do you understand this looks really bad to the neighbors?
100%.
And I would have deployed all the techniques that I received when I was a child.
Yep. This has been one of the biggest. I love that you're talking about this because this has been the biggest shift in my marriage personally, is because that's how I would respond. I would get defensive. I'd start pointing blame, right? And going through the parts work that we've done, we did this both as a couple, and me being able to utilize my I feel statements has gotten me so much farther with my husband than anything else ever has. And before I used to, I would project and I would point and I'd want to I would want to almost prove him wrong, I guess. Like my perspective's right, your perspective's wrong, right? And like basically
Yes.
that's how I mean, being completely transparent right now. That's how my brain was wired. And it was one of those like I needed to have the one up. And now that we have gone through this work and it's not perfect, I am still working towards this, but when I lead with I'm feeling very anxious right now. Like if something's not done in the house, right? Like I'm feeling very anxious right now. The dog hair is all over the place. I could really use some support with vacuuming to get some of this hair up. Oh my gosh, does that get him to not and just in the most loving, I want to support you because he wants to support my emotions. He wants me to feel good. And so when I utilize my I feel statements, again, not only does even with uncomfortable conversations, it gets me so much, and I don't want to say me, but it allows us to communicate so much more effectively now, just with that one simple shift right then and right there. It's been
Yeah.
huge.
Yes. And I love how you combined now. And in that instance, you didn't even have to share a story because all you did is you shared the feeling and then made a direct request.
Yes, exactly.
Right. And you have a loving partner that's like, oh my gosh, I want to help you. Of course I'll
100%.
take care of this. Like, oh yeah, you're anxious about it. I'm going to be here for you.
Yep.
Um,
Because so many
And
times
that's
I expected him to read my mind. Like he should have known that I'm anxious because I'm showing the signs, right? And I do like not communicating is communicating, slamming the doors and slamming things down and, like not, and what's wrong? Nothing. You should just, and I wanted him to read my mind as if, that's what he should be able to do.
yes. And
Yep.
let me talk about what you just brought up ever so kindly. And I don't even know if it's a part of the notes today. I don't think it is. But what you're identifying are actually protest behaviors. So in every relationship, there is disconnection and there's tension building. Every relationship, your parents, your children, your partners, your friends, at any point, there is disconnection because life is really busy, or there's tension building because something happened and the other person or you didn't like it.
Mhm.
That is 100% fact. I would lay my license down on that. Okay.
Yep. I totally
And I
agree.
don't care. And I don't care if you're a passive person and you never talk about it or you never admit to your feelings. You're still having feelings. Okay. There's
Done.
still disconnection in relationship. You're still moving away from each other. And what happens is that if we don't know how to take responsibility for our feelings and skill set wise, we don't know how to share them, what we will engage in is known as a protest behavior. And that's what you just described.
Yep.
Okay. Protest behaviors are things like criticism, withdrawal, stonewalling, yelling, anger, rage, blame, like all of those things. And essentially, a protest behavior is designed to protest the disconnection of the relationship.
Mm.
And it's all these nonverbal cues, all these micro expressions to let another person know that I'm really bothered without taking responsibility and sharing that I'm bothered.
Yep.
And think about just how hard that is to interpret from the other person. My preferred protest behavior is withdrawal.
Oh,
So
I'm working on that too, honey. Don't you worry. I'm
yeah,
still working on that one.
it's I want to go sit in the corner and I'm just going to I'm not going to be cold or aloof. I'm not trying to punish you, but I just want you to notice that I'm kind of sad and I'm a little different than I was before, but I'll still be friendly to you.
Yep.
I'm not going to be unkind. I'm just going to be slightly different.
Different. Just
Yeah.
neutral. I'm not
Yeah, and
super loving. I'm very neutral.
because I want you to ask. I want you to draw it
Bingo.
out of me
Bingo.
and
Yep.
go like, oh, honey, what's wrong? Now, because that's what I am. Like I am hypervigilant. I will notice someone's reaction. And I think everybody should be like that, but not everybody's like that. My husband isn't like that.
Hmm.
He
Yep.
just assumes I had a lot on my mind or I had a rough day or maybe I'm tired. I don't know.
For me, it's a parts thing. My parts came out and said, if you're asking and you're curious, therefore that means you care. Right. And if you
Yes.
like, because that was my childhood, is like I was just constantly blown off. So if you're asking and you're curious, that means you care. It was absolutely, again, you guys, we talk about parts work. We have our 3 parts part series. If you guys have not listened to that, please go back and listen to that series. There's so much value, but it was a parts thing for me. It was definitely parts coming out and projecting.
Yep. Yep. And what's really important about that is that if we hit that protest behavior, we never get to apology. We never get to repair. We never get to that direct request. We never get to request the things that we're needing. And what will happen is that either we do this really bad empathy miss, where we completely miss this opportunity to talk about something that was really on our hearts and really bothering us. And then we just go back to loving that person again. And we repeat the whole cycle and we never address stuff. And this is why distance grows in relationships, simply because we lack the skill set and the awareness that we're having feelings and sharing the stories or blaming someone. And what I think was really profound, John Gottman, who he has created an amazing template for couples work and that kind of stuff. There are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, essentially the 4 horsemen that indicate that your relationship is dying. And one of them is criticism.
Mm.
And I see this in relationships. I saw it in my own relationship, in my own marriage. And the criticism sometimes is very different between men versus women. My criticism was bitterness and lecturing, and my husband's was belittling.
Mm. Yeah, I can definitely see that masculine versus feminine. Yep, I can see that 100%.
And what's really powerful about that is that criticism is one of the strongest predictors of relationship failure in the studies that he performed on long-term marriages. I think it was like a 96% rate. If criticism and contempt make it into the marriage, there's a high likelihood that marriage will not survive.
Mm. I can see that though. I can see that because when somebody starts to critique, we start to become defensive, and then the walls get up. And if you can't talk through and work through your emotions and understand how to express and bring them out, then it just, criticism just it puts walls up on both ends, and
Yeah.
you're not able to properly communicate through it.
That's right. That's right. Because we're busy lobbing darts at the other person and not seeing the other person for who they are, not giving the other person an opportunity to make mistakes or be forgetful or have challenges in life.
Where it
So,
works for me, I want to point this out because I think that this is something that's so powerful when I realized that this was what I was doing, because walls would go up on both ends. We talk about criticism, but I started to get to a place where I was listening to speak. I wasn't listening to hear, right? And so Matt would be saying something and he couldn't even finish his thought. And I was already forming my response because I needed to be right. And you needed to see my perspective. And I refused to hear what he was saying because I needed to defend my stance because I was right. And therefore, the criticism that you know what I mean, it felt criticizing. And so, therefore, I was then defending my actions and my stance. And he could have told me the sky was blue and I would have some sort of rebuttal because I wasn't listening to hear. I was listening to speak and to defend my stance.
hmm and that's what happens when we don't know how to share feelings, because when we're trying to convince someone of our side of the story and win the argument, what we're actually hustling for is validation of our feelings.
100%.
And once couples figure this out, I tell you, and I have couples role play this sometimes in front of me, and they hate it because they're like, oh my gosh, this sounds totally like something that you would do in a therapist office. And I'm like, yeah, I know. It's like going to PT. It's like going to PT or doing moves in the gym. Like, yeah, some of it's gonna feel really foreign because you didn't learn how to do it. Go with it.
Go with it. Yep.
Just because it's foreign and doesn't feel right doesn't mean that it's inaccurate. It actually means that it's going to grow you.
Hmm.
So here's a practical test to determine whether or not you're sharing a feeling or a story. And what I want you to do is I want you to ask yourself, could this be true even if they had good intentions? If
Mm,
it passes that, it's feelings like I feel hurt. If it fails, it's because it's a storyline. I feel hurt because you clearly don't care.
mm. So obviously that's a story because if they had good intentions, that wouldn't be true.
Mhm.
Yep.
Now, Nicole, I'm curious for you. Can you think of a feeling that you have trouble saying without immediately justifying it?
Shame, 100%. I hate more than anything, and Ann and I have had personal sessions about this. Like it is when I don't know. Nothing is more, it's humiliating to me when I don't know and have to admit that I don't know. And there's a lot of shame around that for me. So shame. And I immediately go into trying to justify and, deflect from that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mine is, a matter of fact, this just happened to me the other day, is failure to do something. I have this long-standing pattern of hyper focus and procrastination. I can get a lot of crap done real fast and super intensely, but I will let it sit until the nth hour. And so sometimes what happens is I'll wind up getting little baby consequences because I let it wait for too long.
Yep.
I missed the deadline. I forgot to email someone. Someone's upset because I totally like blew it off or didn't notice it, or like it was on my head for like 3 weeks. I swear it was. And I'll go into, well, I was thinking about it and I swear I looked at it and I just didn't respond, and I get really defensive around it because in all due honesty, it's just me accepting responsibility. You're right. I procrastinated on it. It's really hard for me to do this, and I'm not sure why it's hard.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. And it doesn't same thing for me. It's like for me to admit that I don't understand something and ask for help is it's again something I'm still working through, but it would have been I would have saved so many people's time and energy if I would have just came out in the very beginning and say, "Hey, I could use some support here. I'm not fully understanding. Can you help?" Instead of me trying to research everything on my own and then execute and then it not get done correctly and then have to go back and redo the whole thing, because if I would have just asked for support or help the first time, it would have been done correctly and we wouldn't be redoing this whole project or this whole process. And so yeah, it's the same thing for me. Instead of just saying, hey, you want to know what, I didn't really understand those instructions, or I wasn't quite clear, can you, I hate, like I never want to feel as if inadequate. And so when I have to ask for somebody to re-explain something or to admit that I don't quite understand something, people can explain things to me all day long, but I'm a visual. I have to see. And if I can see you execute and do something, it helps me understand tenfold. But if you're just trying to explain something to me, and I can't visually see it, a lot of times I struggle. There's a disconnect there for me. And so I struggle with, if I don't have that visual to ask somebody to repeat something, or maybe to have them re-explain it in a way, or maybe explain it to me as if I am too a toddler, because
Uh-huh.
clearly right now I'm not understanding it in the way of how you're presenting it. So I have had a lot of those same experiences. I'm like, Nicole, and I'm kicking myself in the ass. You just wasted 48 hours of time and energy and effort if you just would have asked for a better, not even a better, but a more clear expectation and a way of explaining something that you actually understood, because we wouldn't be doing this right now.
hmm hmm So I'm curious, what is a phrase you catch yourself using that sounds like a feeling, but it's actually a verdict? Like, do you have common themes that you notice now with your parts?
I'm not experienced enough for this is a
Ah,
huge one for me. Like, I don't
yes.
have enough experience for this. I'm not qualified. Who do I think I am? I'm not qualified. I'm not qualified to run a business like this. I'm not qualified. That is absolutely, definitely parts that continue to come out for me.
Identity limiting belief.
100%.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
used to be very much so around my physique and those, and I've worked through a lot of that. I mean, I still have my days, don't get me wrong. We're all girls, right? We still have our emotional days or whatever,
Oh,
but
yeah.
a lot of that has shifted now from my physique into my career. And that is now where a lot of my judgment lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I want to notice that because a lot of these themes that we have and a lot of stories that we have, it is a constant rinse and repeat. I have a lot of people that will show back up in therapy sometimes years later saying, why can't I just get over this? Why can't I just feel like I'm a better person? Like here's the challenge on this. That will likely never go away. And I'm not saying that you can't feel like a good person and you can't be confident and you can't have a lot of success in life. But there are themes that are ingrained in us and things that come out for a reason. And instead of wishing or like assuming that you've done something wrong and that's why it's there, let's just assume that it's something that you get to pay attention to as work that needs to be done when it shows up.
Mm, I love that. I love that perspective shift.
And think of it almost like a weakness in your body. I got a rotator cuff injury that every now and then will flare. Rarely does, but every now and then it's like I tweak it ever so, or I do a new exercise and I yank it too much, and I'm like, oh, yep, there it is. And I get tender around it, and I'm much more mindful of the movements that I make with my shoulders, or when I'm going to the gym, or I might give it a rest for a couple of days. But it doesn't mean that I give up. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean that it's going to define the rest of my trajectory, what I'm doing at the gym for the rest of my life, or that I'm going to for the rest of my life. My shoulder is going to be disabled. It's simply a moment now.
Yep. But that is how we react to situations like that. That's how our parts respond. It's almost as if like you should. I've had moments like that, just completely thrown the towel. Do you know how many times I've like told, specifically with business, like that's it, I'm shutting doors tomorrow. I can't do this. My parts are coming out. And it's just like as if, I have messed something up so badly that, like I can't recover from. And it's still something that I struggle with to these days. And those, and again, they're parts, right? Like they're parts that come out for me that are like, well, if I close everything down, then I can't fail. Then people
Yeah.
can't see me fail, right? Like it's a
Yeah.
judgment perception. Then they
Yeah.
won't know. Like they can't see that. So, and that just comes with, being on social media. That comes with, a lot of, the challenges that come from being online and all of that I'm still working through. But it absolutely is something that I have to be mindful of because my parts get come out, they flare, and I get dramatic AF. And
Uh-huh.
it seems to be the silliest things too that just completely send me in a tailspin, and not even the things that you think would, right? That are maybe, financially driven or driven by, maybe employees or so. It's just the silliest things that tend to like just completely throw me for a loop and into a tailspin.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And those again, those are just those themes and they're solid.
Hmm.
And what's really powerful about it is that once you realize those are themes, I call them tells in therapy land. They're tells to let us know that your inner child is out, or there's a part of you that's coming up that's that's essentially, it's like a trigger. You got reawakened. Something inside of you got reawakened, and here's that old thing that you've grown up with your whole life. One of my tells was never being good enough. I would work really, really hard in relationships. I would work really, really hard at work. And no matter what I did, it was never good enough. It's because I hadn't learned how to acknowledge myself. I hadn't learned how to be proud of the little accomplishments, the things that were hard for me to do. I always thought it was about achieving something, and always, always, always failed in comparison to someone else.
Yep. I feel that in my soul.
And I still do it today, where I'm like, oh, well, there's other therapists that have created these huge mega practices. What am I doing with my life? How come I'm not? And I'm like, hang on, Anne, like, you got a different, like, you raised a lot of kids. You were real busy for a while.
Yep.
Like, and it's okay. Your path isn't the same path. All you have to do is be better than yourself. But what's really phenomenal about it is that the more often we attend to it, the less often it comes up.
Mm. So the
And
less
that's
often, the less often you actually entertain it. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Because if we're really working to address it, really working, what is it that I feel proud of? What are the things that I would have done differently? What are the struggles that I have? What are the things I'm up against? Not what other people are dealing with. Not, oh, well, this person had this and this horrible diagnosis and they still did this. That's not helpful.
No.
That isn't about my life, right? That doesn't grow me as a human being. That doesn't grow them. That doesn't help anybody.
And we've had other podcasts where we've addressed this, but it is so we are hardwired to look at faults, right? Like we're hardwired to only focus in on everything that's gone wrong, and it feels extremely foreign for us to own everything that we have done and how far we have come, and what we have accomplished, right? And I work with a lot of our clients, and this is something they all roll their eyes with me, and like they might like just okay, Nicole, here you go again, but it's very much so. It's like thank you, Nicole. I fully receive that. Like really, truly receiving a compliment, really, truly owning something because we as I think I want to say humans, men can do this. I feel like females maybe are a bit more guilty of this, but we have a hard time taking ownership of, things that we should be proud of. It feels really uncomfortable to say, hell yeah, thank you. Like, yeah, you're absolutely right. I crushed that. Like it feels really uncomfortable when somebody pays you a compliment. Like how many times has somebody said, oh my God, you look great. And you're like, oh, well, thank you. But I still have 20 pounds to lose, right? Like, and you're always like, it's like you're automatically deflecting instead of thank you. I've been busting my ass. Thank you for seeing that. I truly appreciate that. I truly own that. That feels foreign.
Yes.
It feels so
And
foreign.
and what's really interesting is that that's also an area of pride for us as human beings. Like we have learned to be self diminishing, and we confuse it with humility. But
Mm.
ironically, it's actually a form of pride. It's like, oh well, I should be better than that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And so this leads like nicely to the next thing. Here we are, that sleep thing where
Mhm.
my mouth and my tongue isn't work. There we go, guys. There, you just heard
There.
it. Okay. Now that actually leads me nicely to the next thing that I wanted to talk about, which is self-responsibility for sharing feelings. And what responsibility means here is not judging yourself for having feelings. This is something that's really, really powerful and something that I see often in the work that I do with the patients that I see. People come in and they will say, I am so stupid that this bugs me. Why is this bugging me? Why
Mhm.
am I so upset about this? Why can't I just simply get over this? Do not judge yourself for having feelings. That doesn't help you. And instead of blaming yourself for having an emotion, simply acknowledge that everyone has them.
Yep.
Every single person on this planet has every jealousy, anxiety. And I have gone tooth to tooth with attorneys and surgeons and school teachers and like other therapists and other psychologists. And I'm like, oh, no, you got them all.
Yep.
And no, I'm not a jealous person. That's not what I said. It's not about being a jealous person. It's about having that emotion.
Mhm.
And there's a huge difference when we start being able to label our emotions accurately and then not feel like it says something awful about who we are as a human being.
Yeah, and take responsibility for sharing them in a way that is productive instead of suppressing them and pushing them and sweeping them under the rug because that, I mean, it always comes out, whether it be, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years? How many times have you been mid argument and all of a sudden something that you suppressed because you didn't understand how to share comes out into like it's like you're arguing about one thing and you're mid argument and that thing that happened 2 years ago comes up because you still haven't, you're still harboring it. There's still resentment for it. That's something that again, something I'm still working on. Even little things that come up for me, I will make observations, and not everything I bring to Matt, not everything I bring to my team, because, this applies in my relationship with my husband. This applies in my relationship with my employees. This applies in my relationship with my son, like you said. But I definitely am responsible enough to myself to journal and work through it. So when there's things that come up for me that I can't quite identify, I will pull my journal out and I will ask a lot of questions until I can identify, because again, the stories come up for me, right? It's a
Mhm.
story. And then I've gotten really curious about, and a lot of times it's attached to a part that's coming out. Why did that trigger me? Why did
Uh-huh.
that bug me? Like,
Yep.
why do I feel so much resentment or anger or jealousy, like you said, towards X, Y, or Z? And so, a lot of the times, too, I guess my point here is like you're responsible for sharing your feelings, but you're also responsible for uncovering them, right? Instead of just like sweeping them under the rug and getting curious enough with yourself to understand why you feel that way. Because a lot of times when I ask women when I'm coaching, it's like, well, why? Well, most of the time, women can't even answer it. They don't
Oh
even
yeah.
know why they feel a certain way. It's just like, well, I should feel this way, or I was taught this, or so and so said this. Okay, but why? And that's the
Mhm.
most powerful question. And it's one word, why? And
Mhm.
90% of the time, most people can't even answer it.
That's right. And I want to discriminate here. This is very different than a judgmental why. This is an actual curious why.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Yes.
they're the same word, but they sound dynamically different, especially when we're internally doing them. The why, like, why am I still struggling with this is a judgmental why. Why am I still struggling with this right now?
Yep. Yep.
And when we can get to the curiosity piece, oh my goodness, let's talk about opening up doors
Oh,
that
and
your
windows.
judgment, oh my gosh, that your judgment and shame will never open.
Yep. 100%.
Feeling like there's something wrong with you because you have a moment that you're feeling jealous versus why, like, I'm not a jealous person. I do this for a living. I do this at home. I, like, every now and then my husband will take out my sons and I'm like, and you went out to lunch with them? And, and I, well, we haven't been to lunch in a few weeks. What, you went to lunch with them? And I realized they're like, oh my gosh, I'm jealous. My husband took my sons out to lunch, and jealousy is simply about unmet need.
Yep.
That's it.
100%.
It's like, yeah, it's a fear-based reaction. Oh, you gave like your limited energy to these, like, our 16-year-old sons. There's nothing left for me.
Yep. I love that you talked about that, because it's the tone of which you talk to yourself, because that matters and it matters a lot, but it is the way of which, when you start to get really curious and you approach it from a, I don't want to shame or, uh, uh, just the negative self-talk that we have. I'm not trying to beat myself down, is what I'm trying to say. I'm just genuinely curious as to where this emotion is coming up, because 98% of the time it has nothing to do with the story that you've built around it. It is something so much deeper than that, right? And again, the curiosity piece, like Anne said, is going to open windows and doors for you.
Yes. And what I will say, is that what is insane about this is that the better you get at being able to identify your own emotions and the stories that are getting created in your head, or the messages you're getting from someone's words, their tone of voice, their nonverbal cues, the better we get at actually discriminating the difference between an emotion that I'm having and something that someone else is doing that I need to hold them accountable for, like gaslighting
Mm,
or
putting up
belittling.
boundaries. Yep.
And if you get good at being able to identify, I didn't like that, or I felt shame because you talked down to me. This is the work this is the work my husband and I had to do. I'm the lecturer and he's the belittler, and like we both can identify it. He's like, I feel like you're my mom right now, and that brings me shame. And I'm like, well, I feel like you're my dad right now, and you're talking down to me, and that, like, and then I feel like an idiot. But that shame already lives inside of us.
Hmm.
And once you get around, like, I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling like I'm ashamed of myself, and then you challenge it, you think, well, like, am I stupid? No, I'm not stupid. Are there things that I don't know? Yeah, there's things lots of people don't know.
Yep.
And what's really, really cool about that is is that now I can spot gaslighting and defense mechanisms and belittling on a dime, and I know how to respond to it.
Mm,
I
that's
no longer
powerful.
get defensive. It's not even in my own personal life, but it's in my professional life as well.
You can dismantle it. And here's the thing is it is your responsibility to share your feelings and be able to communicate that. But on the flip side of that, you communicating how you feel, you can't control how the other person reacts, right? And that
Right.
is a piece of, and I think that's where a lot of women struggle is they don't know how to communicate because they're so afraid of the judgment of how the other person is going to respond.
Yep.
And there's a lot of fear built in around that. So you can't control that. Like that is absolutely with outside of your control. All you can control is how you communicate and your intent behind that. Was your intent loving and to be able to withhold boundaries and you had positive intent behind what
Yeah.
you're doing, and the other person may not be doing their own work. The other person may get super defensive. The other person may start to deflect. The other person may start to finger point. I was that other person for a long time. So I've been there, been that other person, right? And then I want to, and that's what happens is we want to take that communication and it can feel really uncomfortable for the other person when one person starts to communicate well and the other person doesn't know how to communicate. So
Oh
then
yeah.
they then take that communication and they get defensive and they want to turn it around and they want to flip it on you because they're feeling really uncomfortable.
That's right.
And that I was the other person is my point. And I've been that person. So really truly it was a game changer for me when I realized it's like, okay, I can't control how the other person acts, but I can absolutely control how I communicate. I can control how I can control how I respond to their reactions, but I can't control how they react. And nobody can trigger you. Nobody can make you angry. And again, it's exactly
Speaking
that.
truth. Speaking truth.
Yep. And
Yes.
it's really easy to say, well, my husband made me upset. My husband did this, or my husband, and I'm using because it's just really prominent in relationships. And it's like, okay, your husband may have done something that triggered a part, but you are 100% of the response to that, right? And it's hard, you guys. It's hard work. It is so hard to own your lane, stay in your lane, to
That's
be able
it.
to ultimately be able to communicate without raising your voice, communicate using your I feel statements. It's hard work and it challenges you to the bitter core. But I've never had a situation where I have held my ground, stayed in my lane, utilized my I feel statements that hasn't worked more so, I guess, in my favor, right? To whether it be trying to communicate a need, whether it be, and something for me that I still struggle with is admitting that I need help, admitting that I'm overwhelmed with the housework, admitting that I could use support with this, admitting that because I should be able to execute and do all things. And so again, it's a me thing. And so therefore my immediate form of communication used to be to point and blame. Well, you're not helping me. And I'm doing all of these things and to justify why I couldn't execute X, Y, and Z, instead of just simply saying, hey, babe, I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now. And I could use a little bit of support with the housework because, I get really anxious when there's dog hair on the floor. You guys can tell that that's a trending pattern in my household.
Uh-huh.
And every single time, when I point the blame and be like, well, you don't ever do that. And it never worked out well for me. But when I communicated with, again, being responsible for sharing my feelings in a way, utilizing my I feel statements in a way that's soft and just says I could utilize or I could use this support without fail. He's up before I'm even finishing communicating what I'm trying to say, saying, absolutely, babe, what else do you need? And
Yes.
so that's the difference. And when it clicks, like Anne said, windows and doors open for you.
That's right. And one of the things that I encourage people to learn how to spot is the word never and always. And that is because usually that's an indicator that your inner child is trying to communicate. And think of it like this, that children, teenagers, I know teen girls tend to do this a lot. I've had several of them. We tend to communicate when we don't know how to communicate the feeling or the depth of the feeling. We communicate by using provocative language.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to draw people into the emotion and the experience that, like, oh my gosh, this is so desperate because like 90% of the time you're never helping out with the chore. You never notice we don't know how they're noticing.
No.
We don't know if they swept when we weren't around, but we're trying to draw them into this emotional experience. And the reason why that backfires is because the second you say never or always, your partner's going to find that one time back in 1986, they actually did it when you were sick and down for the whole weekend from that surgery that you had. And they're going to bring it up now.
100%. We spend so much time, and this is what we do though, is we spend so much time defending the story that we don't allow ourselves to process the feeling, right? Because we're defending our stance. And again, this was the girl that always needed to be right. And again, I'm still working through this, you guys. I'm not perfect, but I spent so much time defending my reality, defending how I felt. And a lot of the times, too, the craziest part about a lot of this, and again, I bring it back to my relationship because I feel like this is where a lot of women are really going to resonate with, is that I didn't even want a problem solved. I didn't even want him to, I just wanted to be heard. That's
Yes.
the craziest part is like, I
Yes.
didn't even want anything from it. I wasn't expecting anything from it. I wanted to be heard and I wanted to be justified in my feelings of overwhelm. I wanted to be justified in my anxiety. Maybe I wanted to, you know what I mean? I just wanted to be heard. And ultimately, that's what it came down to. And when I realized when my parts would come out and what I was really looking for was just to be heard. It opened up that communication lane even so much more at that point because again, I was defending some sort of story that I had made up in my head that was so dramatic that he never did and I'm always doing and he doesn't understand and you don't see and I'm running this business and I have these things and you're not struggling with the same and how can you possibly understand? And really, I just wanted to talk about my day, get it off my chest and be heard. That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah. And why this matters so much over time in relationship is actually there's some really great research that actually talks about this. Is Andrew Christensen's research on withdrawal, demand and withdrawal cycles, where one person shows up, they raise an issue, often laced with criticism or bitterness, and this could be done even just in your tone of voice,
Hmm.
not even the words you're using.
Yep.
Okay. And what happens then is the other person withdraws, which increases the urgency to be heard, which increases the criticism, which increases the withdrawal. And now we have this self reinforcing loop that keeps going on in the relationship. And so many couples, and when I ask people this, what makes a successful marriage or what makes a successful relationship, so many couples will say things like strong communication, love. These are lovely things, but trying harder to communicate actually doesn't work when we're communicating incorrectly.
Hmm.
Same thing. You go to the gym and your reps are horrible and your form is awful
Yep.
and you're lifting too much weight, your body isn't going to get the benefit of that. You're just going to get injured.
Yep. 100%.
And that's exactly what's happening in our relationships. We're showing up literally lack of skill set. Everybody gets to not know. Everyone gets to not know, right? Everybody gets to say, like, yep, I wasn't taught this. Maybe mom and dad didn't know. It's no one's fault. But once you hear stuff like this, now it's your responsibility to go figure it out.
Hmm. Yep. And
And
understand.
this
Go
is a rehearsable skill, not a personality trait. So
ahead.
I want to say this because this is something that I hear from one of my daughters where she'll say, like, Mom, I'm just not you. I can't do this. I don't share things the way that you do. And I'm like, oh honey, I didn't either.
It's taken me years to learn this skill set. It's taken
Yeah,
me
no, no,
years
no.
of practicing and applying.
Decades upon decades where
Yeah.
I got to this. Like, Dave, I went to school to learn how to do this, still didn't learn how to do this. Did practicums to learn how to do this, still didn't do it. Right. Okay. Literally my entire life has been focused on learning how to like do psychology better and share feelings better. And this is a skill set, not a personality trait, and has nothing to do with your intelligence. Absolutely nothing.
Takes reps, you guys. It takes reps. It takes intentionality and it takes reps and it takes ownership. Like be really truly being able to get really not just even curious, but to get intentional with wanting to practice these behaviors. Because when you're in the thick of it and you're in the thick of a heated moment and an argument, like your initial gut response is to respond how you've always responded, right? To get angry, to get defensive, to start raising your voice because when I raise my voice, then I get attention. But it is your responsibility to get really curious as to why do you feel the need to raise your voice? Why do you feel the need to have attention? For me, I'm the same way as you, and I would withdraw. And when I would withdraw, my husband would immediately start to get more just he would start to come down a little bit, and he would, because he gets really uncomfortable with I draw. That freaks him out. And so
Uh-huh.
and I knew that. So when I would start to withdraw, then he would start to come down a little bit. And it was a tactic that I would use because now you're begging me. Now at this point, right? Like now I'm the one that has the one up. And these are, you guys, like I said, I'm still in the thick of this. Like this is all parts work, but it was something that I had to get really, like, what was it about the withdrawal that I was seeking? Because if I
Mm-hmm.
withdraw, then it gave me the upper hand. And again, it's my constant need to have to be right and defense my stance. And then, therefore, if he's chasing me, then I don't have to fear that he's going to leave me because we have this big argument and we have this big disagreement. He still loves me, and now he's coming back. Oh, babe, come on, like talk to me. And that's his own parts work, and he's come a long way there too because he's only reinforcing my shitty behavior, right?
That's
And
right.
we were just, and that's what we would do. We'd be in, like you said, these vicious loops.
Yes. And him chasing after you proves now his love, right? Proves
Exactly.
his intention. So it denies the story without you ever having to voice the story and take responsibility for the feelings.
Yep.
And in some relationships, people will try to punish the other person in fear that they'll leave, but hopes that they'll stay because it communicates that they're loved that much.
Mm.
Like this is how messed up
Our
these
brains are.
defense mechanisms get inside of us when we don't know how to share the feelings.
Hmm.
So, and I have an honest admission on this because there was a time not just earlier, well, like a few months ago actually, my husband said, hey, our son who's in Arizona with his wife, they have a golf tournament, and he's like, do you mind, I don't have enough points on my Delta or my American airline to get us all there, myself and our sons included. Do you mind if I go there to this golfing tournament? Now, mind you, I had just gone to my daughter's house to help the granddaughter for like a whole week, helped with my brand new grandbaby. Like, love that time, just me. Okay. And instantly I felt it. All right. Okay. Felt jealousy, felt hurt, felt like all the feelings. And out of my mouth, and I do this for a living, guys. I cannot understand. Like, I was really tired. Out of my mouth, I said, that's fine. They probably don't want to see me anyway. And I just
Mm.
dropped it like a bomb, right? Okay. And my husband, bless his heart, who's done his work as well, did such a good job. And he said, what are you talking about? They love you. They'd love to see you. I don't understand what's happening right now. And he said, and then, to his credit, he said, honey, when you say things like this, it makes me not want to go. And I sucked up really fast, and I'm like, I didn't take responsibility for my feelings. And I said, you know what? I am so sorry. I would never want you to not be around your kids. Let me see how many miles I have. Let me see what it is that I can do to see about getting there as well, because I would also really like to see them.
Mm. Hits way differently, doesn't it? But yes, I mean, it's that immediate, and sometimes you like we talk about the intentionality, just it comes out of you, and then you immediately feel it, and you're like, oh. But for a long time before I did my parts work, I would have the but then I would just defend that, even though I knew that it was, I don't even want to say wrong. I knew that it was not appropriate, right? Like it was almost mean. It was down, like a lot of times I would belittle, but yet I could never be wrong. And so I would defend my stance till the cows come home. Instead of just like you said, taking ownership. I'm so sorry. That wasn't okay. I'm so sorry. The way that that blurted out was not how I intended it, right? Like
Yeah.
I said one thing and I meant another. And being able to communicate and just own that piece of it goes so far, so far.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think that this is based upon what it is that you've done? Do you think this is teachable? Do you think this is incredibly teachable, or do you think that some people just are emotionally gifted that just know how to do this?
Oh, it's absolutely. If I can learn this skill set, anybody can. And like I said, I'm still in the thick of it. I believe that it's very intentional. I believe that you have to continue to put in the reps. I believe that it takes, just as anything, any new skill set, it requires repetition to adhere to learn the skill set, right? And I always say, my coach used to say, and I love this analogy. He's like, Nicole, this is a dimmer switch. This isn't a light switch. We are rewiring years and years and years of other patterns, right? So this isn't going to happen when we talk about this. You're not going to flip the switch on and it's going to be perfect overnight. You're going to have to continue to practice and put in these repetitions. And for the longest time, even me just using my I feel statements instead of immediately pointing blame and wanting to take a conversation, and I just automatically blur out, and I'm like, and I would pull that back and I'd be like, I could have used my I feel statement here, and I would self correct. I
Yeah.
feel really something. I feel this. I feel that. And you guys, even using this, not even in just like arguments or disagreements or times when tensions are high, using this when things are really great, right? And using the, hey, babe, like this makes me feel so supported right now. Thank you.
Oh,
This
yes,
makes me
yes, the
like really
acknowledgement
being the
piece.
acknowledgement. And, on the flip side of that, I struggled with that too. I don't know why that even felt vulnerable to me, but it did.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
really just being able to communicate in that way, again, like Anne said, windows and doors have opened for me. But specifically, I think this has been a bigger shift. Well, it's been a really big shift in the disagreements and the arguments, but on the flip side of just acknowledging all of the work that he and just randomly, I see all of the hard work that you put in. I want you to know how much I appreciate it. I want you to know how supported I feel. I want you to know how taken care of I feel. I want you to know how safe and secure I feel. Thank
Yes.
you. And on both ends, again, that it's vulnerable. It's vulnerable. My point is like is it's vulnerable on both sides.
Yes. And I think what happens is that we use, especially when we're in withdrawal, like withdrawal sharing criticism of withdrawal kind of cycles and loops, and then we move up into big explosions or big fights. What happens is we use the after the fight as the moment to kind of acknowledge the other person and to say, like, oh, I actually have seen you do this, or yeah, I did feel really loved, and do the acknowledgement piece. Please don't wait for a big meltdown
Mhm.
because you haven't shared your feelings responsibly to get to the thing to acknowledge each other. Like that's all of us want to be seen. All of us want to be seen and heard and understood and known. And that is such a powerful way of knowing someone and reinforcing a behavior.
And I think and this is kind of slightly off topic of what we're talking about when we talk about the polarity journey that myself and my husband have been on, is that, in my mind, I needed to bring something to the table in our relationship. In my mind, it was gifts, it was, what I could do from the business. It was all these things that I needed to bring to the table. And at the end of the day, what lights my husband up more than anything is A, being able to take care of me, and B, being able to, like, he wants to, like, when he understands how safe and secure I feel and how, I don't even want to say needed, but just what he does for me in that way, right? Like nothing lights him up more than me giving him the compliment of, hey, I see how hard you're working, the acknowledgement. Thank you for taking care of us.
Yes.
Thank you for
Yes.
leading us. Thank you for providing. Thank you. Nothing lights that man up more. And so in my mind, I needed to bring something to the table, right? Because I was boss babe and I had all of these qualities, and this is what you're gonna want. This is what you're gonna love about me. And it's seriously, it's the simplest act of, my God, you've been busting ass. Thank you for
Yeah.
thank you for taking care of us.
And that too winds up being a part of us, that hustling part of us, because I've got one of those parts too where it's like I want to get seen. And what's interesting about you sharing that is that when I grew up, that's how I thought people would know me, because I was a competitive swimmer and I like broke records, and so people knew of me, and I traded that for real relationships. In
Ooh,
other words, like I thought that being known was more important than, like, being known of was more important than actually being known.
ooh, that's powerful. That is powerful. I worked through a lot of that when I was in my bodybuilding physique days, when, I was known as the
Yes.
girl that had the bicep veins. And if I didn't have bicep veins and you weren't stopping me at the grocery store, then I wasn't worthy enough. And so I feel that. I definitely feel that 100%.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and let me talk about shaded stories and empathy misses, because I think there are some very interesting ways that we can share stories, and this is something that I see often. But some of the worst empathy actually misses inside of warm, complimentary stories of the past. So I hear often where couples will come in, or even one partner will come in and say, I miss when we couldn't keep our hands off of each other, or I miss when date nights used to occur. Do you remember when you actually used to plan out vacations for us? Remember that time that we went to Florida and you did XYZ? And what's really challenging about this is that it sounds like we're actually complimenting them for something that lives in the past. But what we're actually missing is sharing, I'm feeling lonely and disconnected right now. Right
Mm.
now, I would like those things.
No. Yep. Hiding
So,
our feelings in those stories. Like we're saying
mhm.
something, but we mean something else. We're being somewhat passive aggressive about it.
That's right. And what we're not doing is we're not sharing the bare feelings. And what a lot of people struggle with, especially when we didn't learn how to talk about feelings growing up, because not being able to talk about our feelings or have our feelings validated growing up creates trauma in the brain. I cannot undersell this. The brain does not distinguish it differently than physical trauma. And it feels more exposing to us to be seen for the vulnerable feelings than it does for us to create a story or a narrative around it and hoping that they're going to catch the idea.
Mhm. Hoping they can decipher and they can read between the lines and they can play private detective and read our mind of what we actually meant by that and then get triggered when they can't figure it out. That was me. Then I
Yeah.
was triggered when they didn't decode. Even though I was being, and not, I wouldn't say I was intentionally being passive aggressive, but I would intentionally drop these hints as if they should know what I was trying to do instead of, again, being responsible for communicating my feelings and taking
Yeah.
responsibility for communicating my feelings.
Yes. And just in case you're wondering, and is it not okay to share things that I loved in the past to bring it? Absolutely. That is not the problem. The fix is the sequencing, not the silence.
Mm,
So, in order to give this and deliver well, lead with the story. Say, man, I loved that vacation back when we went to, Mexico and you planned it all out. We did that resort. And then, very much like what you did, move into that direct request or sharing, I'm feeling really disconnected. It's been a while since we've had it. Do you think that we could do that again?
mm. Watch him move mountains. Watch a man move mountains for that.
You think we could have a weekend getaway with just us?
Yep. 100%. That's powerful.
And what happens is now you're actually using your partner as a team member instead of the person that's to blame for you feeling lonely and disconnected.
Yep.
And what's really powerful about this is that loneliness is about exclusion. It is not about being alone. And
Mm,
a lot of people experience loneliness and they don't know what to do about it, but it's about not being able to share my feelings. It's about not being able to share what my needs are and what my desires are.
mm. Yep. 100%. Because again, that feels vulnerable. It comes back to that vulnerability piece when we share our needs and our desires and our wants, because whether that be judgment, whether that be maybe they won't follow through, whatever it is, there's vulnerability to that.
That's right. That's right. So, and I want to give this as a kind of the takeaway, the second takeaway on this podcast is that I want to invite you to share the feeling before you tell the story. And the reason why that is that feelings tend to orient us as human beings, not anger though. Anger usually will cause another person to bristle up and get ready to defend themselves. I'm really frustrated that we haven't done this. I'm kind of annoyed that we haven't gone on a trip. Don't lead like that.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm feeling really sad or I've missed you and I'd love to have this experience and then share that story.
Hmm.
And and be cautious because if you're leading with the antidote, even a flattering one, what I want you to do first is be curious about the emotion that underlies it and get really clear about sharing that emotion. And I know it feels really weird. And you're like, oh my gosh, this sounds like this woo woo therapy junk. And no one talks like that. You're right. Lots of people don't talk like this. And that's why lots of people come in and see people like me.
Yep, 100%. Because it will. It's going to feel really uncomfortable for a period of time. It is going to feel really foreign.
Yes.
And you need to
And
understand what that emotion is when you bring it to surface. Because again, for a lot of women, I don't think that they even understand. Like there's the resentment, there's the anger, there's the fear, there's the jealousy, whatever that is, but you can't even pinpoint why you feel that way. So these parts are coming out, these feelings are coming out, but it's just like you can't even quite identify why they're there. And so I know for a lot of women, it's just like we start to feel a certain way. And it's how many times we have it like, and I've challenged women here. It's just like, well, why? And again, so many women can't answer that. So when you're leading with something like that, I would just be very crystal clear, like Anne said, being able to uncover and unpack exactly what that is to be able to communicate your feelings. And whether it be something that stemmed from something that happened and you've realized it now and you've had this like aha awareness moment that this is what the whatever that is, but be able to truly understand where these feelings are coming from is because again, I would be angry at times, but I couldn't like I was angry and I was always angry over something stupid, right? I was angry over a story of the whatever I created, and it wasn't the toilet paper that ran out. It was something that was much deeper than, and I'm just making it up, the toilet paper or the dishwasher that hasn't been unloaded or whatever these bursts of emotions that come out for you. So I would just be just very cautious that you understand and you're unpacking what really is underneath the quote unquote story.
that's right. That's right. And I want to talk about this as a process because I think what's really hard is that when we finally get to a place where we're sharing vulnerable feelings and we're able to identify and take ownership and go, yep, that's my feeling. This is a story I'm going to create. I'm going to deliver it now. And literally, guys, use this as a script. I'm feeling fill in the blank on the emotions, sad, hurt, lonely, disgust, jealous, hopeless, helpless, whatever the emotion is. Please don't let it be anger, guys. And that is just because if it's anger, it tends to be defended
Yep.
and it's not great to share the anger. So sit on the anger a bit. The story I'm creating is this. And that's the thing, whatever that story is, that's usually the thing that we say our emotion is.
Mm,
So I feel like I'm not good enough. I feel like you don't care about me. I feel like nobody ever sees me. I feel like I'm the only one working around here.
yep.
Okay. And what I want to talk about is that empathy failure is a process, not an endpoint. I want you to reframe the concept of like, okay, well, I did it and I did it exactly the way that you said. I hear this often, and it didn't work. And I'm like, okay, so tell me more. What do you mean it didn't work? And and so we'll go through a series of things. And it's things like my partner said, oh, well, that's not really that big of a deal. Or why are you upset over that? Are you serious? That's what you're upset over? Or I
Mm,
didn't mean to do that. What you do the same thing to me.
yep.
Okay. This is a data point, and I want to be really, really careful about this. If we label the relationship itself as a failure in communicating, that is a story as well. You can be disappointed that your partner didn't know how to receive those feelings, but that is still a process. That is not the end point. And what I tell a lot of people when they come into therapy and they got a partner that maybe isn't showing up for therapy, and they're showing up trying to clean up their side of the street. This is what I talk about often: cleaning up your side of the street. Sometimes we have to do both sides of the equation. So when I was early in this, and I would say, well, I'm really anxious about da 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 da. Okay. And my husband would be like, I don't understand why you're anxious about that. I told you this is going to be fine.
Mm,
And when I was really regulated and when I could do this, and it was really powerful when I could do this, I would look at him and I go, well, that's not helpful. I was really just hoping to hear that you understand why I'm anxious. I really just wanted to vent. I didn't
yep.
need you to tell me that I was wrong.
100%. You just want to be heard.
That's right. And then I would do that thing that my husband did. You know, when you do that, when you tell me I don't have a right to feel that way, it makes it hard for me to share.
Mm,
Now you've given your partner data.
give them something to understand where you're coming from instead of expecting them to know and expecting them to understand even half the times the emotions that you can't even process.
That's right. That's
Yep.
right. And according to Gottman's research on repair attempts, any move, however small or clumsy, that de escalates the conflicts or takes any ownership, that is actually more predictive of long term stability in the relationship. Because what couples want to see more than anything else is we want to see effort, not perfection. Yes,
Mhm.
perfection would be lovely, right? It'd be lovely if we got like, oh, you said you're going to do it, you did it. But we really just want to see somebody showing up.
Yep. And effort's just so, I mean, on my end, it's just so, there's something so sexy about effort, right? Like when you know that they're making that attempt. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be flawless. It's just it's the intentionality behind it that goes a long way.
Now, I want to cover something, and I want to close with this because I think this is, you mentioned it earlier, and I want to circle back to this because I think that this is a really powerful concept to consider when we're doing any of this work. The goal is never the response, it is always only how you're showing up. And the reason for that is, and I do this all the time in therapy, where someone will show up and say, like, it didn't work. This absolutely failed. And I said, hang on a second. Okay, how do you feel about what you did? What do you like? And they're like, well, I didn't like anything because it didn't work. And I'm like, no, 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 hang on. Did you use the I feel statement? And they're like, yeah, okay, I did that. And did you stay calm? Yeah, I did that. Okay. But it still didn't work. And I'm like, okay, well, did you name call? No, I didn't do that. Okay, well, did you pout? No, I didn't do that. Wow, you did a lot of really cool stuff.
Yep.
All of it. And they're like, but it still didn't work. I'm like, well, actually, it did. You cleaned up your side of the street.
Yep. And did it not work because you didn't get the response that you wanted?
That's right.
That's the perception, right? Like it didn't work because their response isn't what I was expecting their response to be.
That's
Again,
right.
I can nail that because I struggle with that too, you guys. I'm just calling myself out on all of these things. I'm like, yep, 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 ding, check, check, check.
Yes. And we have to decouple the delivery from the outcome because if the goal is to make them respond correctly, your peace becomes conditional on someone else's behavior, which is not in your control.
Yep, 100%. 100%. And it's
And I
so
would say
hard
that,
to learn to you guys. It's so hard to adopt. It's so hard to, like Anne said, really acknowledge. It's like I did all of these things. I quote unquote cleaned up my side of the street. I took ownership for every single part of this process that I can actually control and be able to walk away feeling good with that outcome, even if it wasn't, you didn't get the response that you wanted. You didn't get, whatever it is that you were looking for didn't happen in the way of which you thought it should happen. You still owned every piece of the puzzle that you could possibly own.
yes. And this is a long-term process, not a short-term process. I think the same thing exists when it comes to managing our bodies. If we show up at the gym and we're committed to it and we're like, well, I'm sure you hear this all the time, Nicole. I'm doing everything that you tell me to do. Why am I not seeing results? How come I'm not losing lots of weight?
Yep.
Okay. It's a time under pressure. It's a pattern of how we engage. And the more emotionally stable that you become and the more responsible you become in sharing your feelings, the more the other person will be able to receive.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And again, it's like Ann said, it's work, it's intentionality. There's so much work that goes into just truly being able to communicate clearly and effectively, but at least for me, the biggest hurdle was being okay with not receiving what I think I should have received from that. And again, it's still a process for me, you guys. My parts want to come out, they want to get upset, they want to be frustrated, they want it to be a certain way. And this is something that, and again, and then I have to go back and get really curious with myself. Why are you so frustrated because it didn't happen in this way? Like what were you attached to with the outcome? What does that outcome say? Is it something that it validates something, a part that's coming out for you? Is it something that, you know what I mean, you need to feel safe? Like what was it attached to that outcome that you're so upset over because it didn't happen in a very specific way? And so that is, for me, that's been the hardest. Like I can acknowledge, I can work on, I can, and like I said, it still is a work in process, but the hardest part is being okay with outcomes, even if they aren't exactly as I anticipated them to be.
Hmm.
Because you
And
can't control
when
everything.
we can decouple that and we can separate the outcome, like how I showed up and how I responded and like what was hard for me and what I did well and what I need to tweak next time, and we separate that from the response. What happens is we start taking information, but we also start walking away feeling proud of ourselves
Mm-hmm.
because we have goals that we achieved. And we start taking their lack of reception of the feelings as a data point, their lack of apology, again, as a data point, their lack of ownership as a data point. It is not a conclusion, but it's information that I'm storing about whether or not I believe that you're a person that loves me and is willing to do the work necessary to make this relationship work.
Mm. Dude, this is so good. This has been so good. I hope people find value to this because this work is so like it is so powerful. Same thing wrapping back into the parts work. And and I will forever preach parts work because it has been life changing for me. But when you really start to get this curious with yourself, when you really start to take ownership, when you really start to get intentional, it just impacts how you show up everywhere. And again, you guys, I'm not even just talking your relationship. It typically tends to show up within your spouse, I believe, the most.
Uh-huh.
But it shows up everywhere. It shows up in how I lead my employees. It shows up in my business. It shows up in how I show up on social media. It impacts every area of your life. And it brings a sense of calm. It brings a sense when you're that in control of your emotions and being able to regulate your nervous system and being able to be that in control of your reactions, even regardless of the other person's response. Holy shit.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Powerful.
yeah.
Powerful. And there's very few people that can honestly sit back and say, yep, I want to even take ownership, right? Because it's really uncomfortable when you start doing this
Oh,
work. It is
Yeah.
so uncomfortable. Like Ann said, calling myself out, I immediately got, well, they would want to, it sounds like they wouldn't want to see me. And just, it's really uncomfortable to have to sit back and just own your own things and want to get curious of where those things are coming from. And it always comes back to childhood. Like when you get really, like when you start to dive, it always 100% every single time. Why does everything come back to childhood? But it does. It
It does.
absolutely does. It's that wounded girl inside of you that's still trying to feel seen, supported, and heard.
That's right.
That's what it is.
That's right.
That's what it is. And it's just, I would encourage every single one of you to even just get curious. Because for the longest time, I thought this work was so woo. I was like so anti-woo. I really was. I was just like, I would roll my eyes at it, and we have my lead coach on my team who actually coaches Ann Jules. We joke around about this because she is the definition of woo, and I'm definitely tapping more into my woo for sure. And we start talking about, she's like, I love to be able to have these conversations because we talk about operating from a higher place and a different vibration place, and a higher state of energy and nervous system regulation. And I've done sessions with Anne of just really even being able to understand. I didn't even know. I remember the first time we had our first, and I'm like, what do you mean nervous system regulation? Like, it's just how I deal with stress. What do you mean that's impacting? Like, what? No, no. That's for those like wishy-washy wooey people. Like, no, I'm a get shit done kind of girl. You don't understand. And so
Time
even
for
for those
feelings.
people, I just would encourage you to get curious
Yeah.
because that
Yeah.
curiosity leads you down to so many paths. And when you start to just want to explore, it opens up the doors. And there's just a lot of power with being able to control your emotions and be able to, like Anne said, it's taken her decades. And I'm still thick of it. And I'm not perfect by any means, but being able to show up differently in every aspect of my life with being able to control again. And the biggest part of this is I can only control my side of the lane. I can control how I respond. I can control how I react. I cannot control anybody else's response, and I can control my response to their response, and then really getting curious because most of the time it's going to trigger that's going to trigger parts of you as well, right? When you don't get the response that you think you should get. But all of this work is just so fascinating when you start to just you want to sit back and you want to dig deeper and you want to understand where all of this is coming from.
Yes. And it creates even the work that you've done and the way that you talk about it, just the joy that you are just exuding and how it is that you interact is so much more happy and peaceful
Mm, I appreciate that.
because you have done, and I can say the same for myself, but like it creates this really beautiful ripple effect in the world around you. Like we think that we're only one person,
Mm,
but you interact with so many other people on this planet, and it could be just a cashier at Walmart, but understanding the difference between I'm having a feeling and you did something to me, and knowing where that comes from is so freeing.
hmm It is. It is freeing such a good word for it. You just nailed it. Freeing is such a good word for it. Because you just, for the longest time, I would just walk up. I was a walking like stress ball, dude. I stressed over everything, everybody else's emotions, everybody else's feelings, everybody else's perception, and I would hyperfixate over all of the things that I could not control. And then, of course, with that hyperfixation came the worst possible scenario with all of these things, right? And my nerve, like I don't even want to call it nervous system at that point. I don't know what it was, but it was completely shot, and I just walked around so tense all of the time. No wonder my jaw, and like I would chip my teeth, and I just, no wonder, because I could not regulate my own emotions. And that's what a
Yeah.
lot of this comes down to, is being able to regulate your emotions and being
Yeah.
able to communicate them clearly. And when you start to learn how to do those things, and again, I'm still a walking, breathing, living. I am still practicing this every single day, and I am by no means perfect. But even my husband and I were having this conversation. We're just talking about how much different we communicate now. And even being able to acknowledge in disagreements that we now communicate via parts. We now communicate like, this is a part that's coming out. I know that this is right. And just how that changes the whole entire, it's no longer an attack. It's no longer a pointing fingers and a blame game. It is this is what my part is saying.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
Yes.
And now, being able to communicate effectively through my I feel, and being able to, again, get to the deeper rooted, like we talked about the emotions, what's living underneath that, not the stories that we're telling ourselves, but getting down to that deeper rooted. And I'm gonna shut up because I could talk about this until the cows come home, you guys. And it is like 9:30 where Anne's home or where Anne's at right now. Girlfriend's been up since 1:30. We need to wrap this up, but I just would really encourage every single one of you guys to start to get curious.
Yeah, yeah. It's really, really powerful when you find when you figure out how to do this work, and so liberating.
It really is. I'm so excited to share this in our group community too, because I think this is going to be really powerful for those that we coach, just really being able to understand and continue to evolve this. I mean, we do this in coaching, but just be able to hear what we're talking about and be like, yep, I understand how applying this makes such a massive difference. So if you guys do find value to this episode, like I said, share it, share it. And that's what Anne was trying to say at the beginning of the episode. Share, comment, tag us. We would love to hear the feedback. Anything else, Anne, before we wrap up?
Oh, I think we did a great job.
We absolutely did. Well, we are going to see you guys in the next episode. Ciao.